All right, everybody, my name is Chris Hilson. I've been elected as moderator to the Exeter School District, so I'm here. It's my obligation to preside or moderate over tonight's deliberative session. So everybody, welcome to the deliberative session. The first thing I have on my agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So everyone wishes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next thing that I was hoping to do is everybody at the head table introduces themselves, and since Neil is closest, Neil, I'd ask you to go first as soon as you swallow your coffee.
Yeah. Thank you. Neil Blyken, Exeter School Board.
John Bullins, Vice Chair of the Exeter School Board.
Patrick O'Day, I'm the Chair of the School Board for Exeter.
Esther Asbell, Associate Superintendent here in SAU 16.
Patty Surratt, Exeter School Board. Sarah Edwards, Exeter School Board.
Thank you very much. For those of you who missed it, I have put together a list of rules for tonight's deliberative session. They're at the front table. If you want them, I can go and fetch them for you right now. If they look familiar, it's because they are going to be familiar. My law partner, Kate Miller, who was my predecessor here, actually drafted them, and I shamelessly plagiarized them. So they are very similar with very light editing. They are not Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order, I learned, actually is a book about 5 inches thick, and I'm not prepared to moderate pursuant to Robert's Rules of Order. I'm hoping none of these rules will be necessary here tonight. Tonight, as most of you know, is an opportunity for everyone to discuss and deliberate the 3 warrant articles, proposed warrant articles that we have, which are up at the front in case anybody does not have a copy but would like them. Town voters are permitted to speak, and if the will of the deliberative body wishes, non-town voters can speak. But if you are going to speak, I would ask that you show your card so at least I can tell that you are indeed a town voter. Absent that, I'm not going to go into any more rules. I guess what I would do is I'd like to kick this off immediately and have the President of the Board, Pat O'Day, introduce warrant article number 1. President O'Day.
Okay. So I'll read the first warrant article. It's on the operating budget. And it says, shall the district raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget proposed with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein totaling $21,261,861. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $20,950,146, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Exeter School District or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. The school board recommends $21,261,861. So, operating budget. That's this thing over here that we have. A lot of the budget, as you might imagine, is really salary. So a big chunk of this doesn't really, it's going to actually, we're going to talk about that as a separate warrant article because we have a new contract, but you know, the people that we have that are in the district, the teachers and whatnot, that's the salary that really comprises the majority of the budget. But there are some things that are different from last year, and if we didn't make any changes at all to the budget, then as you saw with the adjustments for the default budget, it ends up being $20,950,000, where the board is recommending $21,261,000. So it's about $300,000 more than it would have been with the default budget. So let me explain some of the things that make up that extra $300,000. And actually, as you'll see, there's been some scaling back in some other areas because I'm going to go over probably about $800,000 worth of changes that only have about a $300,000 impact. So one of them is that we have had a need for more substitutes. it's a pretty decent-sized school district. I think we have almost 100 teaching staff, and when you are looking at all those folks to really have a permanent substitute that's ready and available at all times is not something that we've had on a regular basis. We've had from time to time, but there's really a need to have 2 long-term substitutes. It's a similar rate of pay as what we get other people to come in and do it, but it allows us to make sure we don't have a classroom that doesn't have a teacher in it on any particular day, even if someone goes out on short notice. So it helps prevent that problem. The second area is, and that's about $100,000, $102,000. $129,000, 487, which is salary and benefits and whatnot, is for a new social worker. Last year, we, well, really this current school year, we added a social worker with the blessing of the voters. That's something that had been looked at by separate subcommittees for a number of years. They really felt that there's an increased need, both from an emotional point of view to have a social worker, and to the extent that there's a connection between folks that might need that extra emotional support and those that then start acting out in disruptive ways or violent ways. It also has a safety implication to it. And we have one social worker who's being split right now between 2 buildings, but instead the administration and the board supports this, is recommending that we have a second, because we've seen that one person is really running around and is only just barely meeting the need, that there's really a need for a second person. So that's that position. Third area is something that this is interesting, because this is something that costs the district money in the short term, but in the long term it's designed to save the district money. So in the short term, it's $175,892, and is what those monies are for, is for an early retirement, well, not early retirement, but a retirement incentive, so that if folks retired, we gave them a little incentive each to retire on top of their traditional retirement, and we end up replacing them with folks that come in with a lower pay level. Still experienced, still folks that we think are competent and can do the job well, but they're not the folks that are at the top of the scale. And so in the short term, it cost us $175,000. If I have my numbers right, I think it was saving $300,000 next year is what we anticipate. And I can tell you from the budget workshops that we've had a couple of budget workshops. The board has sort of re-emphasized, we don't want this to be sort of a fake savings, that, boy, that $300,000 just disappears next year, that we really want that locked in and used to try to be an offset for the taxpayers next year. I should have said, before I go over a couple other things that are on here, just as a general matter, there's really a lot of work that goes into this budget. It's not just, the principals get together and kind of brainstorm a couple of ideas and pass it along. There's really a lot of back and forth with the SAU office, a lot of back and forth with the board, where they go back and look at ways, are there ways we can trim here and there, are there ways that we can look for something that's more cost effective to still meet the needs. So it went through that process before we even brought it to the voters. 3 more things just to touch base on. One is an assistant director of special education. Right now, there's a position that's a little bit less than half-time. It's 0.6, and increasing that position to 1.0 really provides additional support for the special education department. I mentioned the part about a social worker. Social workers really working with all kids, not just kids that are identified for special education purposes. But even within the special education section, we're seeing that more and more kids are coming with those needs and they qualify for those services. And we have a federal and state responsibility to really reach out and support those kids appropriately. So there's a real need there to do that, and that frees up the director to do some other things, and so that increases that position. It costs about $70,000 to make that increase. Another one that's probably one of the bigger number-wise pieces on here is about $274,000 is for another special education placement. I think it's one placement, is that right? Right, so The folks in the special education office get a sense on we try to house the kids that we can here just in the school with other kids as much as possible. It gives them access to all of their friends and peers and community neighbors. But every now and then there's some kids that just have real specific needs and that this just doesn't work for them. And if it's not that they're getting the best place in the world out there and they just decided they want something better and they're too good for this school, it's that it just doesn't work here at all. So in those cases, we're required to make sure that we can provide them with an appropriate education. And a lot of times that takes in transportation, sometimes it's a residential placement. In any case, there's a need to set aside that amount of money because we have the anticipated need of an additional special education placement. The last thing is there's just some additional adjustments of about $40,000 that were some things with some, another retirement that was sort of in the mix and some smaller pieces. But the total of that is, as I said, is $793,000. So $793,000 of increases, and yet the difference between the default budget and the budget that's being proposed or being supported by the board is $300,000. So in other words, there's about $400,000 worth of savings that have been realized in other parts of the budget to try to make this number something that we're not passing on too big of a tax burden to the voters. So that's the operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. O'Day. Would anyone like to comment or have any questions concerning Article 1 of the warrant article? Excuse me, warrant article number 1. All right. Hearing no comments, do I hear a motion to close deliberation relative to warrant article number 1?
Motion.
Mr. Blyken has moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Mullins. Does anyone have any discussion or wish to discuss the motion that's currently on the table? All right. Hearing none, I would ask for a vote. Let's do a voice vote for now. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous, so the deliberation is closed with respect to warrant article number 1. Before we move on, do I hear a motion to close reconsideration of the previous motion that we just made? Ms. Edwards, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second for that motion?
Second.
Mr. Blanken, anyone want to discuss the motion to restrict reconsideration of the vote that we just had relative to warrant article 1? If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them as well. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of the vote authorizing or closing deliberation of warrant article number 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, the motion carries. I'm going to move on now to proposed warrant article number 2, the Exeter Education Association contract. I understand that Ms. Bullins will be presenting that to everyone. Ms. Bullins.
Exeter Education Association contract. Shall the district approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Exeter School Board and the Exeter Education Association teachers, covering a 3-year period from September 1st, 2020 to August 31st, 2023, containing the following increases over the preceding year. In 2020 to 2021, $265,565. In 2021 to 2022, $291,761. In 2022 to 2023, $276,191. And further to raise and appropriate the sum of $265,565 for the 2020-2021 year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and salary-related benefits over those of the appropriation at the current staffing levels in the prior fiscal year. The school board recommends that the school district approve these cost items and make the appropriation of $265,565. So I had the pleasure of serving on the negotiations committee with members of the school board and administration feedback, as well as our teachers, their union, all of those people at the table. We had a lot of conversations back and forth, really nice cleanup of some old language and things that wasn't really fitting anymore. We also made some adjustments to some health insurance premiums to offer one policy instead of the two that have been offered in the previous 3 years. Each of these contracts is always for 3 years, so the one that we have currently ends this school year. We came to an agreement of a 1.5% increase in each of the years going forward in these 3 years. It actually, with steps and things like that, it actually amounts to a 1.3% increase in the overall budget. And it's something that we all came together and feel like is a really good foot forward for the next 3 years for our teachers here at the SAU, Exeter.
Okay. Does anyone wish to discuss, deliberate on proposed warrant article number 2? Now is your chance. Please, can you identify yourself, sir? Well, yes, sure.
Okay.
It's probably for the best. You can get on camera.
The question I have is, what's the percentage of the increase, and is it the same each year?
It's 1.5% each year, but the overall budget impact is 1.3%.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. O'Day.
I just want to make a comment about that. I also was able to join Dawn in that subcommittee, and that percentage increase of 1.5%, and particularly with the actual impact, I think might be one of the lower, if not the lowest one that I've seen in the board in quite a long time. So I think the association and the board again was particularly mindful to build on your question there about the potential impact and what we're locking people into for the next several years, not knowing what the economy holds. We're looking 2-3 years ahead, to not be locking in, as I said before about the operating budget. Salary is such a big part of our budget, and to not lock something in that would be this huge burden on the taxpayers was pretty important to the board and important to the teachers and the association as well.
Would anyone else care to comment, or do they have any questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to close deliberation on proposed warrant article number 2?
Motion.
Mr. Blanken has moved. Do I hear a second? What's your name, sir? I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Belageron. Mr. Belageron is seconded. Does anyone wish to discuss the motion that's currently on the table at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Do I hear a motion to close reconsideration of the motion to close deliberation on proposed warrant article number 2?
I'll make a motion.
So moved. I'm sorry, Ms. Surratt. Thank you. Do I hear a second to that motion? Mr. Blanken? Does anyone wish to discuss the motion to close reconsideration of the approved motion to close deliberation on proposed warrant article number 2? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. We're now going to move on to proposed warrant article number 3, which I understand is going to be explained to us by Mr. Blanken.
Article 3, Special Education Expendable Trust. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $75,000 to be placed in the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund previously established for the unanticipated special education costs at Exeter Elementary School. The sum to come from June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. The Exeter School Board recommends this appropriation, majority vote required. And the headline for this is, We've established a fund that's already in existence. We contributed to it last year to provide a buffer for special education needs, which can be both very unpredictable and costly. So as a budget protection measure is the way I think of it, we've established this to make it easier to plan. And there are no additional tax implications to this particular measure. There are no additional funds to be raised. This comes from any balance available at the end of the year.
Okay, would anyone care to comment on proposed article, warrant article number 3? Mr. Blanken just explained to us. All right, hearing none, do I hear a motion to close deliberation on proposed warrant article number 3?
Make a motion.
Ms. Bullens has so moved. Is there a second? Mr. Belageron, thank you. Does anyone have any further comments on the motion to close deliberation on proposed warrant article number 3? All right, hearing none, call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Great. And then finally, do I hear a motion to close reconsideration of the closed deliberation on proposed warrant article number 3?
Make a motion.
Ms. Bullens so moves. Do I hear a second? Ms. Edwards, thank you very much. Does anyone have any comments on the proposed motion to close reconsideration of the vote on proposed warrant article number 3? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, the ayes have it unanimously, that passes. That concludes all the proposed warrant articles we're here to discuss. Is there any other business to be had at the deliberative session? I don't believe so. Can anyone think of it?
I think more
Mr.
just
O'Day.
in terms of an announcement, which is when the voting is on the
thank
warrant
you.
articles.
Yes.
I don't know if that's already on your agenda, but just to...
So the voting that we've done here today has closed reconsideration of the proposed warrant articles and the votes that we've taken to close deliberation. To my understanding, consult your own counsel, that concludes any motions for reconsideration. The only reconsideration that can be had on those motions is going to be at the ballot box, which is going to be
March 10th.
March 10th. Thank you very much. Anything further that anyone can think of that we should take up here tonight in the deliberative session? All right, hearing none, do I hear a motion to close the deliberative session of the Exeter School District? Mr. Belageron so moves. Anyone else?
Second.
Ms. Bullens, anyone wish to discuss? In that case, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The deliberative session is now closed.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start the school board meeting for Tuesday, February 4th. This meeting followed the deliberative session in which we reviewed several warrant articles that we had, 3 of them to be exact. So that session ended 3 minutes ago, and it began with the Pledge of Allegiance. So since we did it as part of that session, we are going to forego the Pledge of Allegiance for this session. The next item that's on here is a note about visitors. Are there any visitors that would like to address the board? I'm not aware of anyone that was invited as a visitor. And then the next one is a note on here about public input. Do we have any public input? I will note that I received an email just before I got here, which I haven't had a chance to look at. And there's a request to read it out loud, which I'm reluctant to do as a practice, just to read out loud every letter that we get. We did do that when we had a special session, and we told people if they couldn't be here, they could submit a letter. But I can say at least what it was about in terms of public input, and I'll certainly be passing that along to the administration. It was some public input about the report card. Again, I haven't even had a chance to read it to know what their position was, but they had said that, oh, you're here.
That's my letter, yeah.
Oh, well then you can come forward. And actually, I apologize. That's the part about public input. Well, then please come forward and make sure you share what you want to share about it.
Stand here?
Yeah. Yep. And you're welcome to read your letter too if you have it with you. Or just explain or do both.
I do have it, but I'd rather explain if that's okay.
Perfect. That's great.
My name is Ben Morse. So we wrote a letter because I have 3 daughters, Evelyn, and Ruby and Miriam, and they are 9 and 7 and 5, and so they're here at Lincoln Street, and then the 2 that are at Main Street School in 2nd grade and in kindergarten. And my wife and I are both educators, and when we received the report card for particularly the youngest one in kindergarten, we were reading through and we were reading the competencies, and the report card has shifted from kind of a skills-based reporting card to this new competencies-based. And to me, the report card is a tool for the teacher and the school to convey to the parents and the student how they're doing. Like, what are you working on? Where are you meeting your expected level of progress, and where are you? And with the new report card, I feel like it really missed. My wife and I are both educators, and we read the competencies, and we did not understand them. We did not understand what they meant and where they were for a measure of how my girls were progressing at their appropriate age level. And that was concerning to me. At the end, there was a space for the teacher to write a blurb, and they did, and I found that very helpful because I got a feel of what was there. But everything else was very mechanical, very technical in the terms and the way in which it was written. And I found it very confusing. I would like to know and have confidence to know that when the school talks to me about the progress of my students, that they can tell me where those skills are and where they are not, so that I can address that. I had an opportunity to share my feelings with other parents around, and I have yet to bump into anyone who feels like they understand quite what that means. And so this is something that was very concerning to me. I would like to make sure that the report card is a clear indicator of my child's progress and something that I can understand and convey and talk to them about. Thank you.
Folks, any questions you want to?
I guess, of course, we've talked a lot about this at different meetings. The board itself isn't part of the new report card process, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's something that they're moving to throughout the SAU, I believe. It's starting at Main Street School. Is that we started at Main Street?
Started in SAU 16, so all the schools K through 2 started. This is their
K
first
through 2,
round.
okay. So
of
that they could
so-
then be tracked through a high school. I'm not an educator, so I guess what I would ask you is, what are the pieces that you feel are missing? I know it's completely different, and I know that I've asked questions, you know, how are the parents going to feel when they get this home? Do they know this is coming, and things like that? So I guess, is there a certain sort of specifics? I know there's a lot of different skill sets, but of things that you feel that are missing, or that are so far off base that it doesn't make sense?
We took out the report cards that we had from my older daughters who went through, and then compared that with the youngest ones. And with the older one, there would be a whole series of skills. So, can your child pronounce the vowel sounds correctly? They're learning their letters. They're learning the basic words, and they started to go through and tell you, like, kind of some of those basic skills and where they are with those. And with this one, the language of the competencies is so complex that it's hard to apply it to someone who's 5. It would take me a minute to call it up and read it to you, but I feel like it would be important if that's okay. It would take me just one moment.
While you're looking up, can I just give a couple,
Yeah.
a little bit more information on that? Is just so everyone knows, March 10th is our feedback session from parents for Main Street. We'll do one in every town for exactly this purpose, to gain feedback from parents, what's helpful, what's not. There is that overarching competency, which is in competency language, and then underneath that are the I can skills. And that we were hoping would serve the purpose that you are speaking to, is I can sound out my letters, I can count to 10. So that's on there, but what's on there is it's individualized to your child. So if you are working on 10 I can statements, then there's 10 things your child can do, and then over here are things that they're working towards.
Can you elaborate on that? If you said there's 10 statements and there's 10 things.
Right, so underneath the competency, which is then on the proficiency scale, which is developing or exceeding or just beginning, then underneath that are the I can statements. I can statements where the child is currently at, and then I can statements for where they're headed. So again, this is our first round at it. We fully anticipate to get feedback and make changes. We've been saying this, I'm looking to administrators, our teachers know this is version 1. And that's really our purpose, is to gather feedback, make adjustments. You know, we don't know, some people might say it's too long, it's too short, it's not thorough enough, the comment section was helpful or not helpful. So that's really the purpose of this first round, is to get that feedback and certainly make adjustments. So I appreciate that feedback, and I'm going to say it one more time, March 10th, from 5:15 to 6:15, so right before the board meeting. So if you have other parents that would want to come and give feedback, that would be great.
Some of the things that I found confusing were, for instance, competency number 2 states that students will make meaning of increasingly complex literary print and non-print text and provide text details to explain interpretations and thinking. This is for my 5-year-old. And this is different from the next one that states that students will make meaning of increasingly complex informational print and non-print texts and provide text details to explain interpretations and thinking. Now, if you're just listening to me and not reading, you might notice that the only thing that has changed between those two competencies is that one says increasingly complex literary print, and the next one, the third one, says increasingly complex informational print. I'm not quite sure how I apply that to my 5-year-old. The last one, competency 4, states that students will draw, dictate, write to compose narrative text describing real or imaginary events or experiences. To what degree are we talking? If my child is proficient in this, does this mean that they are a young author illustrator that can both draw and write and speak? To what level have they progressed? And if it's a D, if it's developing, is this something that is natural because we don't expect them to be able to do this until they're in a higher grade, and so therefore everyone gets Ds? Or is this something that I should be concerned about because now my child is developing and it's something that I should address at home? These are the concerns and the confusion that I have, and I feel like this is our first time through.
Yes.
I understand, and I'm sympathetic to that, but it doesn't tell me the things that I need to know.
Are there I can statements on there also?
So there were 9 pages sent to me.
Yep.
So after the first page of competencies for the English language arts, it does follow, the 7 competencies are followed by the I can statements.
What do some of those say?
So here you're getting into some of the things. So I can read and understand books at my level well. I can show that I know how to use words correctly when I write and speak. And it does go on some more. So these are.
I think that was our hope of the skill set that when you compare the report cards, I think that was our hope, that spoke to some of the specific skills, trying to individualize it so the teachers have some latitude around what I can statements your child can do and maybe what I can statements my child can do.
And these were met with a check or a star. In the past, there had been different letters that were associated with I believe there were 3 stages of where they were moving through.
So the check means that they've achieved that, and the star means that's where they're headed.
Okay.
I think it's on, I'm hoping it's on there. If it's not, that key's not on there, then it's another thing we need to definitely add, but it was supposed to be on there.
It is on there. Okay.
So I appreciate, again, I'm going to say it again for people at home, as Patrick would say, March 10th, we would love more feedback. I've written down your feedback, but certainly feel free to come again March 10th, because we're doing a tour in March for all the districts for this exact purpose.
Yeah.
Can I ask
And we're hoping to get it right. I mean, to get it to a good place. And if you have sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, and if you have other parents who want to email if they can't come, send a letter to
Please email them
Esther.
Yeah.
We take all that feedback into consideration, and I know it was a committee that worked on this long and hard, so it's not meant to be sort of as haphazard as I'm sure it was delivered to you. You know,
No, we
the
have
first
been
time,
developing it
it's,
for 2
yeah,
years.
yeah, and so it's a big switch, and,
It is.
and understandably why you're concerned, so, but yes, please continue to give us feedback.
I have a general question, perhaps for the administrators, and that is this a state mandate that we have to change reporting, or have we selected to do this because it was voted in that this would be the best method to evaluate students? And was there, if it wasn't a state mandate, was there a committee that chose?
Yeah, there's about an 8.5-year history to that answer, to answer that question. But very briefly, we started with that vision statement that we went to every community and every school and every PTO and had a committee of about 40 people, collected all that information from the vision and created the SAU 16 vision. In order for us to align to that vision that the community said, the question was, what skills do you want your child to have when they graduate? And in order to meet that, we needed to look at how we're going to personalize and individualize our education and make it equitable. And so in that process, this competency-based education system allows us to, according to the 7 tenets of the definition, things like student agency, so increasing student voice and choice, reporting system where students have to demonstrate their skills. So that reporting system should also have a link to your child's Seesaw account, which then should demonstrate the I can statements. That's our goal. It might not be perfect because it is a learning curve for our teachers also, but you should be able to click on your Seesaw account, log into your child's Seesaw account, and see the demonstration of I can read books or whatever your I can statement was. I can't remember, I'm sorry. So if a parent was wondering, what does that really look like for my child, they could go into the Seesaw account and it would be tagged with I can read books, short chapter books, let's say. They would see their child doing that. So in order to enact our vision, which was to have cooperative, problem-solving, self-advocating citizens, the competence-based education system aligns with that vision.
And
So then to have a reporting system that then shows that alignment and the demonstration of skills. That's really the key here, is the demonstration of those skills, which is why that Seesaw account is so important. And we've talked about that quite a bit here also, for that link.
So it is elective, and
Yes.
so therefore we can modify the reporting structure
Tell me if I'm wrong.
based on
Angela.
feedback.
The switch,
Right, yeah.
the switch to competency-based education is a state mandated event, right?
All schools have to have competencies. How you choose to do that,
Right.
we are in the state of New Hampshire,
Right.
live free or die. So we can develop whatever reporting system we choose. It has to be aligned to competencies, but you could still give A, B, C, D, F if you wanted. You still can have GPAs. Some schools are mixing those. We were really trying to make an effort with that committee to stay true to the competencies and the individualized and the demonstration of skills. How that evolves over the next year to 3 years is going to be based on feedback. And it's, I think I say to teachers and parents, look at our iPhones. I don't know, we're on version 12. I anticipate as we gather feedback, as we get better at this, as parents raise the questions, as kids begin to own their learning more, as parent conferences also are more equipped with the Seesaw accounts, as those are more developed, because those were new also this year. I think it will, I hope, our goal is it comes together. But certainly this reporting system you see tonight, we fully anticipate will look different.
Is the Seesaw meant to replace the information found in a report card?
No, it is meant to link to it. So your report card will be it, but if you wanted to see a demonstration of that I can, you'd actually be able to see your child doing that. So over time, they develop a portfolio, a K-12 portfolio.
Sounds
That's
to me
part
a
of the
little
goal.
bit like if we're trying to convey to parents the understanding of where their child is, these sentences sound so complex that I think we're hiding the information about where their student is. And if we really want to know, we have to go to Seesaw to figure that out. Then what's the purpose of this report card?
We were hoping the I can statements that you said would help parents identify the specific skills.
But aren't the art can come from the Seesaw?
Nope, the ICANs that come from the competence, the overarching competency, and the ICANs are the foundation to support that competency
Okay.
at grade level.
Thank you for your time. I think
Sure.
So thanks for the input. I think one of the things I'm getting from the commentary is that this may not be the iPhone 1 out of the gate. It may
Right,
not be the
exactly.
runaway hit that the iPhone was.
Right.
But it's certainly important to get feedback, and thank you for taking the time to come today to do that. That's great. I do wonder, just in hearing this exchange here, on whether or not that session is going to be enough of an opportunity for parents to give feedback. I mean, I guess we can start with that and then see where that goes, but,
Yeah, and we also did sessions in the fall,
yeah.
which previewing the report card. We
But now that
posted
it's actually out and that everyone has it and,
Yep,
you know,
so
sort of the
we'll have
rubber
it-
meets the road.
We're gonna have it recorded,
Yeah.
so it'll be posted on the web,
Right.
those sessions, so hopefully parents that have similar questions that can't come to a meeting,
Yeah.
they can go, we're gonna post all of the meetings, so if they wanna go to Kensington, because they can't, it'll be the same presentation.
Right.
So they'll have
But it's
5 different
presentation
opportunities.
and feedback? Is that people
Yes.
can get feedback there?
Yes.
Right.
The presentation will be very brief, and it's mostly to get feedback, that's
Okay.
the purpose of them.
And Don, you had mentioned if people wanted to submit something by email, you were encouraging to, where should they submit that?
They can submit it to me, Esther Asbell, which is
Okay.
easbell@sau16.org, or Chris Andruski. You probably want to look on the web for that, because Andruski is a tough name to spell, but it's candruski@sau16.org. So,
Or-
any venue, or give us a call. We're on the web, you want to call us,
Or any
and
of the board
we're happy to
members, or-
meet with you one-on-one too, if there's any questions.
Where also where all this started, when I said I wasn't going to read the letter, I was certainly going to pass on any of the feedback. So also, if any member of the board gets feedback, we will also make sure that that gets passed on. So if that's easier for folks to send it to a board member that you know, or to send it to all of us, that's fine too. We'll certainly make sure that that gets passed along. Okay. Is there any other public input? All right, so I don't see any, so I'm going to move forward then. So next we have approval of minutes. We have minutes from a budget workshop that we had on January 7th, and then we had on the 14th a public hearing and a public board, followed by a public board meeting, and then we had 2 non-public sessions that are sort of embedded into that. So we have minutes from each of those pieces that are there. So I would need a motion relative to those minutes, if anyone is able to make it.
I'll make a motion to approve all sets of minutes.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the 5 sets of minutes. Do you have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, so any discussion on the motion about the minutes? Okay, then let's take a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or any abstentions? Okay, then those pass. All right, so next we have what's called the chair's report with a note about the PTO. Let's see, we have a PTO rep here.
So,
but-
nope, Allison wasn't able to make it this evening. She did touch base with me, and just to say there's really no new news. Their next meeting is February 12th at 5:30 at the Main Street School Library. So
Okay.
since she spoke last, there hasn't been any changes. And that they're working on Get Fit in May, and per usual, they can always use parent volunteers. You can get in touch with Allison Battles.
Great, okay. Next, we have a note about the Wheelwright Trust. I don't know if we should,
We do have an update, but we probably, is a very specific update, so we'd probably want to do that in non-public.
Right, so we can, I'm going to suggest that we table that discussion about Wheelwright to decide whether or not we want to have a non-public discussion, and we'll just push that to the end of the agenda for now, and then we'll make sure we circle back to that. So we'll move forward into committee reports then. We have the Enhanced Learning Committee. If you're able to give that, or do you want me to skip the Enhanced Learning? Move forward to the, which committee report would you like to give? Thanks, Trav. Why don't we do it that way? We'll circle back.
Go ahead and give any he has, and then we'll go to the next.
Pick one out of seven.
I'll share it with you. Why don't I start with wellness, and then hopefully Drew will be back to it if he has the other ones. So wellness did meet on January 28th. Our next meeting will be on March 24th. The committee reviews its goals and steps is taken to meet those goals, including things like having a walking club at Lincoln Street, promoting 5210, and supporting the work of the Green Team. I will say the beginning of this week's been really exciting related to the Green Team, which has actually been meeting as a separate committee, though I think it sort of falls under wellness, if you might. We started composting both at Main Street School and Lincoln Street School just this week. At Main Street School, we have passed out small bins so that as kids are having snack, they can put their banana peels. I even have to admit, I put a banana peel in my little composting bin today. I've got to feel like I've got to model this in my own office. And we have started with second grade composting. We've had some volunteers from the Green Team really helping, and PTO volunteers. Basically, we've got a simple setup where this year, one of the things that changes was we now use real silverware. We don't use plastic silverware. So the kids drop off their silverware, then they put the trash in, and then they dump the food, that waste that are left, into a composting bucket. We started with second grade. It went really smoothly today. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to be there yesterday, but I think we're working out the glitches pretty quickly, and once we feel like it's working well for second grade, we'll move down to first grade. So that's a really nice initiative, and I do want to thank, we've had a number of parents and community members come forward, and I don't want to mention all the names because I'll forget someone, but they've been awesome. And we've got a number of teachers involved with that as well. At my school, Kate McCaffrey, Kate McNamara, Kate Parmelos McCaffrey, both have been involved, which has been great. You're back? Yes.
You're back.
Nose issue, pardon me. So, this is quick. The Enhanced Learning Committee skipped our January meeting for report cards, so Main Street School staff could work with Alma. We have our next meeting on February 11th, right around the corner, and we will discuss some of the input that we've received from parents, in addition to reviewing what worked and what didn't on the back-end side as well. So February 11th, 7:45 at the Lincoln Street School Library.
I'm definitely glad we waited for that update. What about facilities? Do we have any updates on
There's no update on
I
facilities.
think we've had a meeting lately with facilities, so no update there. Diversity and Equity Committee.
So, the DEI committee met last week. We spent about 3 hours together working. Those who could attend came. So it was a pretty good turnout, and we treated it as a retreat almost, where we had a good amount of time to have and actually complete conversations. The group worked on team building and setting agreements and working with each other, and fine-tuning some of the action plans for some of the subcommittees on the group, which consist of communications, professional development, creating a more inclusive school culture, and work on anti-bias curriculum and programming. So there's a lot of conversation going on right now amongst the committee on what our best next steps are within those subcommittees, and I would imagine that many of the committees or subcommittees will be reaching out to some of the individuals that were interested in participating in the committee from the get-go. There were a number of people that expressed an interest, and we looked to branch out, and as we all know, many hands make light work. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of conversations to be had, and I would imagine there being some good communication coming from the committee in the very near future about what some of those next steps are.
Sarah, I don't know if you.
I think it's great. I think, from September to January, we worked a lot as a committee to establish what our goals would want to be. And then for a new committee with challenging sort of goals about how to integrate it into the school and ask the right questions. And so I think that the 3 hours that we had together gave us the time to brainstorm those and then actually put an action plan in place. So I think that by the end of the year, people will feel, I'm really optimistic that we'll move from a talking phase to an action phase, and then people will feel that they're included in it.
Speaking of action, one of the very first things that will come up that was spearheaded by the DEI committee was professional development for the staff. So on the afternoon of March 10th, we have Teacher in-Service Day. The morning will be CBE based at the high school with the rest of the SAU staff, and in the afternoon it'll be kind of a virtual training. There's a school in California called the Wildwood School that there's a pretty well-renowned trainer that Toya and Augustus hooked us up with, and so both staffs at Lincoln Street School and Main Street School will have real classroom-based practices that they can learn and evaluate to use on their own. So we're excited about that as well.
Thank you.
Next meeting is the 11th of February. Nope, 19th of February.
19th of February. Before we move on to the SAU-wide committees, I did want to inject one committee that I think we forgot to put on the agenda, which is the Professional Development Committee. So that is a committee that meets annually, and we did have a meeting since the last time we met. And that group includes a number of teachers and administrators, and is to look at requests from Main Street and Lincoln Street schools for professional development opportunities that exceed their sort of per capita amount. Everyone gets some money to do a limited professional development, but it doesn't pay for them really going to a conference or some sort of special training or those sort of things, or not. Will barely cover it. Certainly it's not something that's outside the area. So that committee looked at, I don't know how many requests there were. Dozens.
Yeah, I would say.
There were dozens. And the interesting thing is that because we compared to last year what awards have been given, and there really were different people that were taking advantage of it. And folks that had gone to bigger conferences the year before weren't the same people that were necessarily coming back. So, and when that was happening, that we saw a lot of people that were maybe doing something that they had either done before or someone else was already doing. We did look to see if there's ways that, maybe can we send some of the people, not all of the people. But all that being said, there is an amount that's set aside in the budget that's approved as part of the contract, and we were able to meet the vast majority of the requests. And I think we had conversations with a couple of people that we couldn't fully fund the projects, and they figured out a way to sort of amend their request and meet all that need. So it was really great, really good process. It worked out well.
I think do you want that committee on there?
I think just once a year, when we give a report on it, I think it's helpful. I should have caught that before.
Do you usually meet around this time?
Yeah, it's usually right, exactly, sort of mid-year. But really, there really is just one meeting. Sometimes we'll have a follow-up meeting, but that's the real meeting, so to speak. All right, so next we have the SAU Safety Committee. Does that committee met?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay, great.
But I have a question that
Sure.
kind of falls under safety while we're on the topic. The Safe Campus lockdowns that happen, they're very generic in efforts to protect the privacy of the children or whatever they're involved. Is there any way to give small indicators of what the incident was, like child-related, coyote-related?
I don't see any reason why not.
That's the number one question parents come up to me and ask,
really,
like I would know. And
For secure campus, right? You're meaning
secure campus,
okay.
yeah.
Just to make sure I'm understanding the
Right. And then kids come home with like half-baked stories and.
I always, I feel like you walk a fine line between protecting the confidentiality of those involved
Yeah.
and giving everyone the information information they need. I recognize that it's a.
I'm sure people ask you too.
What's that?
I'm sure people ask you too, like, what was that about, you know?
They do. Yeah.
I mean, I don't expect naming names, but child-related, nobody's gonna ask a question. But if it's an intruder or a wild animal, apparently there was one. All right, thanks.
I was gonna.
No, that was the story that was going around. There was a coyote out on the playground. Swear to God.
Well, there was a coyote in the, near the PA Fields that is no longer around.
Yeah.
That was taken out.
Originated, maybe that was the origination.
Yeah, you know about that. I think folks don't.
Yeah.
I saw Mr. Adler was looking at it, doesn't apparently know about this story, but there was a coyote that attacked a family that was on the field. It was two young kids, I think.
This was
Grabbed them. It's just over on the Phillips Exeter Fields.
I'm up on that.
And sort of grabbed the back of the hood of one of the kids, and the father ended up grabbing the coyote and got him in a lake lock and eventually suffocated it to get it to not hurt the family. So even in New Hampshire, in the seacoast area, it's a real threat, I guess. So, all right. So, anything else? The SAU Safety Committee? Nope. Okay. Then the SAU Social, Emotional, and Mental Health Committee.
Sure, we met last week, and we had done that survey, and now we're finally to the action steps, kind of what I feel like hopeful. So the committee tried to look at some trends, and so this is where we're at. We're going to have some intentionally planned mini workshops on the March PD day. Going to collaborate with a doctoral student with a focus on staff compassion fatigue. Dr. Ryan has a connection for that. Creation of a web page and resource for staff members to use with students, focusing on social emotional learning and development. So in other words, if a teacher is struggling with their class around executive functioning, they have a resource they can go and a bank of resources and activities they could do with their class. So developing that. I'm going to provide more targeted information to principals at the next K-12 principals meeting on an activity to address staff social emotional development, and then do it with their staff. So we'll model that and then ask them to do that before the end of the year with their staff. And then at Exeter High School in particular, that's one school that doesn't have a specific climate and culture or wellness committee. So there's someone who works at the high school that's going to start that. Things like Crockpot Fridays or staff outings or goodies in the staff rooms. Most of our buildings have different names for that group, but just something that recognizes in a small ways, either socialization or a way to, just relate to each other and have some fun together. So those are our 5 immediate action steps. So we're excited about that. Those subgroups will meet in March, and then we'll reconvene as a full group on Thursday, April 16th from 3:30 to 5 in the Morgan Learning Center. So again, that's an open committee. Anyone that's interested in that, please feel free to join us and help us out.
Okay. So next is the SAU Policy Committee. I don't know, Sarah, if you have any update. I wasn't not able to go to that meeting.
Yeah, I did attend. I don't have my computer with me, but I think the concern about the two, these are back actually for a third read, the staff ethics and staff conduct. And there was a specific question about the free speech of teachers and ensuring that this document was written and approved, had legal vision, which it did. And so the committee said that, a teacher's free speech would, take precedent over this. If they were to go, to a political rally and have an opinion about something, like that's covered. So the part of the ethics and conduct, it seemed to have checked the box about, I think it was your specific question, Neil.
Yep.
So I think we're ready to vote on it. Everyone's read it. It's gone through 3 times. And that was the last outstanding piece. The reason we had to modify, just to let you know, the reason we had to modify the Department of Education from New Hampshire is because it referred to credentialed employees, and we have people who participate in our schools who are not credentialed, i.e. licensed, and so we needed them to be part of the policy as well. And that is the reason that there's an additional one for Exeter.
Okay. So, we need a motion for each or both of these pending policies, the one on staff ethics and one on staff conduct. Both of those are not new policies, they're revisions. As Sarah said, they've come before the board several times, but really, there's, as a revision, it's only required they come before the board once. But we have questions and send it back, and do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve both policies with the revisions as noted.
With the proposed revised policies? Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll do a second.
Okay, so now any discussion or any, I guess just discussion, further discussion in terms of what we've talked about in the past, but any discussion about any of the points that Sarah brought up or anything else you want to say, Sarah, do you think would be helpful?
I think the goal in the revision was to make the language as clear as possible and not redundant.
So it's interesting, you know, I think the staff conduct one is the easier one to sort of understand because it's not a wholesale revision. It really is just a couple of words here and there. Instead of saying the, it says the policies, it says all policies, or it really has the same meaning. And it adds the word support and enforce policies instead of just enforce policies. And it has the district students instead of just students. So things like that, it's just, the staff conduct one is just pretty clearly just a little bit of clarifying language. The other one I think is the one that caught people off guard, I guess, is that because it really is crossing out the entire policy. And your understanding of the reason why that was important was because of the revisions at the state level?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just making sure I understand because I haven't even heard all those conversations, but.
And ours needed to be more comprehensive than the state level.
Yeah. Any other discussion or questions about the motion? Okay, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that we approve those policies. Thank you, Sarah. All right, next we have the curriculum initiatives, starting with Main Street School.
So first, I just want to thank the PTO. Well, we had an assembly for WMUR. Our kindergarten students enjoyed an assembly with Weatherman Kevin Skarupa from WMUR. We were on TV, which was a lot of fun to see this school. He talked about different kinds of weather and clouds and connected it to students' unit in Next Generation Science Standards on Weather. Really proud, this year for the first time we had a para-mentoring program. And I have to say, it really was a wonderful addition to the para contract that we now have a way to provide mentors for our new paraprofessionals. And during the second week in January, Paula Galing, Sue Quinn, and Robert Vogt from both Main Street and Lincoln Street attended the Education Support Professionals Conference on Mentoring that was held in the NAA national offices in Washington, D.C., and it really was an opportunity for them to dive deeper into the mentoring program so we can continue to develop that program for new paraprofessional staff. Ms. Catterad and Dr. Bennett and I have continued to do all of our observations of new staff, and we've completed 2 formal observations on all of our new staff, including pre-conferences, observations, and post-conferences to help them in their work in becoming teachers as part of our school. And then we had already some conversation about ALMA. The teachers worked really hard to complete the new report cards, and we did have them ready to go out on January 24th. In all candor, we did have some glitches. Technical glitches. Emails were missing in the system. There were some that weren't transferred. So we've been trying to play catch up, and really parents have been pretty great about contacting me and letting me know if they had some trouble receiving it. I did have one mom who after I sent her the report card, she let me know. She said, "Boy, I now get your newsletter as well," which I was really pleased. I was a little disappointed that she never knew I wrote one. But there was one of the benefits is now we're getting all the emails into the system. I think, in terms of the report card, I do think there's a lot for us to develop. I think one of the pieces that, if we can find a way to do it, in my own personal perspective, is right now the competencies are all listed first, and then the ICANNs are listed under. I think if we can find a way to restructure the report card so the ICANNs are underneath the competencies, it will provide much greater clarity, because then, I think what Mr. Moore said is true, that those competencies are pretty broad and difficult to understand. If we can put each of these sets of ICANNs directly under the competencies rather than a separate list, I think it will provide much greater clarity. And also the other thing I'm expecting that will happen is we will review those ICANNs and continue to look at how those, because those are really the standards. There is an advantage to the new report card. I think that one of the things they'll do is they not only provide as a communication tool for teachers, for parents, from teachers to parents, but they also kind of give us some new goals for kids and really trying to promote deeper thinking and higher level skills. They are more complex, but I think as we work towards developing that report card and helping to create, I think we do have some work to do in terms of its clarity, but I think we'll get there. And then I think it will prove to be a really valuable tool. Our crisis team met and we had a tabletop exercise with Rich Kane. The crisis team reviewed the actions that take place if there was a report that a train crash took place. And I just have to thank Rich. He does a great job running us through scenarios. And there's nothing like someone saying, well, what are you going to do if, when you're right at that moment and the crisis team is sitting there and brainstorming, thinking, who do we call, what's our protocol, pulling up, the list of things we're supposed to do. It's really valuable practice for us in terms of getting ready for potential crisis. We did have a drive for the local food pantry, a hygiene drive that was held in January, and had, once again, my office looked a little bit like a warehouse, and we had all sorts of hygiene items, including toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, tissues, and other related items, and St. Vincent de Paul came and picked them up, and they're always very grateful for that support. We will be celebrating Read Across America from February 17th through the 21st. It's an annual motivation and awareness program to emphasize the importance of reading. And it's really exciting. We're able to bring in a number of just people from the community to read and share in the library, which is always a lot of fun. And some of the people who will be coming will include local policemen, local firemen, administrators from other schools and from the central office will all come and read, and the kids enjoy having the visitors read to them. We'll also have a guest reader and a family story hour with a presentation by Grammy award-winning author Ben Gundersheimer, Mr. G. I look forward to meeting Mr. G. And the story hour will be held at Main Street School Gym. Yes, Sarah.
I have a question, especially in anticipation of the Alma session. Would it be possible, because I don't have a child at Main Street anymore, I have not seen all of the competencies with all of the ICANN statements. Right. Would it be possible for the board to have that information in advance of the meeting so we can read through? I feel like it was hard for me to ask more specific questions because I don't have the competencies.
Sure, so basically get a sample of what the report cards look like for each of the kids, because right now we've created, each grade level has a competency-based report card that has their competencies and their ICANNs.
So it would be K1 and 2?
Yeah, because right now we're only doing those report cards for K1 and 2. We're developing them, and then the expectation is down the road they'll move up to 3 to 5.
I feel like it would be helpful, like, was hearing some of the competencies for the first time.
Sure. So you would like
Are they the same for K1 and 2? The report card looks the same?
The format is very same. But you also, there's overlap and there's differences between each one as well.
So I just think as we listen to feedback from parents, it will be hard to understand what they're talking about if we haven't seen
So you have a copy of it? Mr. Morris actually, when he gave his letter, he's forwarded to each of the board members.
Oh, he did?
The one just this afternoon, just shortly
Oh,
before
I
the
didn't
meeting.
see it.
So as I said,
Okay.
that was my initial comment, is I hadn't even had a chance to look at it yet.
Oh, and it has the competencies listed?
He has
within-
both a letter and then he has a copy of his child's report card that's filled out. It's the 9-page report card he forwarded to all of us.
Okay.
So that's.
We could review that and see if that works. Or
If you
if other
look at
information-
I'll
that,
also have percentages he sends the whole board, the competencies
I
and the
think
grade
that would
level
be
I
great.
can't.
People would have more information. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So, Steve did a great job of giving you the composting overview. We're all about making hummus, is that how you pronounce it? I'm not sure.
Hummus?
Not hummus, not like chickpea hummus, but I think humus, I believe.
Maybe that's what attracts the coyotes.
Or rats.
Where do you guys keep it, actually?
Well, we're kind of switching, we're trying to figure out what works best, but I think it's outside the cafeteria, the delivery door. So we are composting K through 2, 3 through 5 at Lincoln Street School. We are creating an abundance of compost in the 2 days so far that we've been doing it. We've had to request an additional tote from Mr. Fox. There is lots of waste in our cafeteria. So I think this will, environmentally speaking, I think this is a good thing that the waste is going into compost, or the majority of it, as opposed to going to the trash. So that's good. We too are working through any kinks in the system, but our kids are doing a great job. I think I'd say about 50% of the kids probably compost at home. We're learning, so it's not a foreign concept to them. It comes pretty naturally to many of them. So the first day, yesterday when we did it, it took kids a little bit longer to get through the disposal line, as you would expect, because there's an additional bucket for them to put things in. So it'll just take a little bit, but already the second day was significantly better than it was the first. The key is making sure none of the silverware is composted. Big challenge there. Another big piece of news at Lincoln Street School. Last Thursday and Friday, we had our third Peacemaker training in 2 years. So Peacemakers are, as part of our restorative justice implementation, and it's a way to celebrate kids that show some of the incredible qualities that we're looking for in our students. So kids that are helpful, friendly, kids that are upstanders, kids that do the very best to bring other people into the crowd. So they are designated as being leaders in RJ at our school. Their most exciting piece of the day was they created their own talking piece, and then they also with other peacemakers created a circle flow, which is basically like a lesson plan for how you would run a circle on their own, so they could learn how to run a circle of basically a classroom conversation with the kids in their class. And many of them were very excited to bring that back to their teachers, and many of them also ran a circle the very next day. So that was an impressive change from in the past. Kids, it gave us validation that a lot of what we're doing was working, because the kids were just very, very interested and ready to jump in and run the circle on their own, where in the past there's a little bit more trepidation. So I think it's becoming more a part of the everyday fabric of our culture. So we were pleased with that. Big news, Unified Arts. Well, let me back up a little bit. This year, each grade level is split into 2 different teams that are made, we call them PLCs, Professional Learning Communities, and the Unified Arts team is also their own professional learning community. This past 6 week, maybe 8 week session for their PLC, they focused on increasing the idea of inclusion at Lincoln Street School. So In all of the Unified Arts classes, they've had that be part of their regular conversation. For example, let's see, in PE, they talk about how they can make sure they include kids in whether it's choosing groups for activities, working in teams, recognizing and accepting each other's differences. In the library, they filled out a paper hand with an example of one way they can include someone during the day. So each class, they had different activities that they did. I believe next week, the kids will be filling out a survey so we can sort of gauge how well the kids are learning what inclusion is and how they can practice it. So they'll get some feedback on what they've been teaching over the course of the last couple of weeks. For third graders, on February 17th, there is their first concert at Lincoln Street School where they'll be performing. They'll be singing, dancing, and playing during the concert. So February 17th is Miss Andriski, Miss Chisholm, Miss D'Agostino, Miss Godrow, and Miss Gardner's class. And on February 19th is Miss Harrington, Mr. Keller, Miss Peck, and Miss Poulin's classes. Concerts are at 7 o'clock. Fun time. There'll be even some recorder playing, so be sure to show up. If you don't get it at your home every night, I'm sure you miss it. What do you think about that, Mr. Blake?
Yeah, it's at home.
Last, this is a shameless plug. We are in the process of coordinating our sap collection for maple syrup production. And we are looking for some good strong backs for people that might have some time to empty some buckets on trees on weekends. We have a schedule that we're putting out. Kids and classrooms throughout the school have been signing up for various days. We have 10 trees on the school grounds. The SAU campus has, I believe, 3 or 4, and Mr. Schmidt is obsessed, and when he drives from home to work, he is scouting the area for sugar maples. Just recently, he picked up 2 at the Newfields Country Store, so he drives by there every day. He's going to be emptying some buckets.
So he will be adding that and bringing it back here to process, is that right?
Yes. Yep, he is a man on a mission. And so good for him, but it really is, it's a fun community event for our school. I mean, the kids are all over the grounds and collecting the sap every day and hauling it over to the sugar shed, and so it's a fun time. And this year we've added an additional piece of equipment that should make the boiling time and evaporation a little bit swifter, and that is due to a grant that Mr. Schmidt filed for that they won, so it's kind of exciting. So if you're interested in collecting some sap, let me know. Thank you, everyone.
The sign up for that is actually in your newsletter, right?
It's in my newsletter, but I'm happy to field your phone call if you want.
Okay.
In terms of upcoming events, there's a winter break at the end of the month, and again, PTO meeting on the 12th at 5:30 p.m. Is it in Lincoln Street? Do you know?
Sorry, it's at Main Street.
It's at Main Street. Main Street, okay. And in terms of enrollments, about 970 students between the 2 schools, again, pretty stable. So that brings us to the superintendent administrative report.
Right, we don't have one because we did it at the joint board report. So we just highlighted, it would be very similar because what we've been concentrating on since then is budgets.
Why don't we, can you give a quick review of what that board meeting was, that we had a meeting? Not everyone would know that. So we had a meeting.
I would recommend that you go to the joint board meeting minutes because I won't remember everything if you're interested, but we highlighted, it was the State of the Schools address from the superintendent and highlighted his goals that were set with I think it was the joint chairs and then the joint boards was how he set his goals. And the meetings that we have, usually our reports are aligned to those goals. He took them out, pulled in a little more broad, a bigger top view, and highlighted the Advancement aligned with the strategic plan, for example, security and safety, felt like that was pretty advanced, that goal. Developing a common report card, that's definitely progressing with another strategic plan. I know special ed highlighted some of their advancements in programming for social emotional needs to meet those. Help me out, what else am I forgetting?
Not sure.
I know Chris did, we talked a lot
Right.
about the new report card and competency-based education, and then the social emotional learning pieces to support that, and communication, and what the superintendent's plans are to modify the budget process with the joint chairs for the SAU budget, for the co-op budget, based on feedback and how to move that forward. Trying to think
Some
about-
discussion about things like the early start time, that project had already
That committee
had gone through that process and had concluded and decided not to recommend that, not to move forward with that.
I think there were 7, so that's just about 7
Yeah.
strategic plan items that we kind of reviewed. But that is posted, the PowerPoint and the State of Schools report on the SAU 16 webpage if anyone wants to go into depth and look at that State of Schools address.
And there's also a non-public session that was a part of it, where there was discussion that was gathered by each of the boards to give sort of a mid-year feedback. It's not a formal instrument, but mid-year feedback to the superintendent about what the sense is of the board members about things that he's doing well and things that we think he needs to focus on more. Is that fair? Patty's our representative for our committee, so so that was a good discussion that we had in non-public. Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay, so we have, is there any new business, first of all? The only thing I'm just going to bring up as an announcement, again, just a reminder about March 10th is when the voting is. We both have voting for the 3 warrant articles that we have, plus each time we have 1 to 2 school board members that are up for election. Each time we have 1 position. So that's the scope of what will be on the Exeter School District ballot. 3 warrant articles and 1 position. I don't know if there's any for the moderators and those things. I can't recall if those get voted on this time, but in any case, we certainly encourage a lot of people to come out and vote. So the last item we had was, we said we were going to circle back to the wheelwright. There's a request to have a discussion in that in non-public. But before we do that, again, just the last chance, because our plan is that we wouldn't take up any of the new business during the meeting, that we would come out of that meeting and close it at that point. Is there anything else that we want to make sure we discuss while we're still in the public portion of the meeting? Okay, so I don't see any. So we need a motion and a second to go into non-public to discuss the wheelwright.
Make a motion to go into non-public.
Okay, and a second?
You have to cite the,
Yeah. So I think it would be under 91A32A. No, sorry, 8C.
C.
Sorry,
C,
C.
yeah.
Mhm. 2C. So I have a motion
second.
and a second. Any discussion? Okay, then we take a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so that's unanimous. So we went a crazy way about it, but that's unanimous. So we will we'll go into non-public, and but for the purposes of the camera, we will close the meeting here. Thank you.